Hamas and Syria have finally kissed and made up. They're best buddies again. Everything is nice and dandy. Check this out. 16th of September. Hamas and Syria. Normalization after a decade of rupture. The war on Syria started in 2011. And, Syria was kicked out of the Arab League, which is ridiculous. How can you have an Arab League without Syria, first of all? But anyway, all these Arab countries, and especially, the petro-states, the gas stations created by the West, egg this on and finance their own brands of terrorists in Syria and all this stuff. And they tried to, make Syria a pariah. The issue that happened between Hamas and Syria is bad because Syria has always, when I say always, I mean, for the most part, been one of the strongest Arab supporters of the Palestinian cause, right? Let me just give you an example. Right now, today, and for the last decades, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which is another group, where is it based? Damascus, right? You think the Saudis would allow them to set up shop there? No. Try in Lebanon and Jordan, see what happens. I'm talking about the governments, right? Not the people there, because if you polled or you asked or interviewed most Arabs do support the Palestinian cause. I think most people, regardless whether they're Arab or not, you show them what's going on, it's pretty clear cut. So this was weird that, suddenly Hamas is not just like severing ties with Syria, but actually fighting against the Syrian government. Now, you will hear that people counter that by saying, well, it wasn't all of Hamas. Some people inside Hamas were against that. They were not okay with Assad, but they weren't okay either with going and sending fighters there and so on. Do not confuse that with what Turkey or Qatar or Saudi Arabia did, which is recruit foreign mercenaries from who the hell knows where, from the UK, from Tunisia, from Afghanistan, wherever. Gather them all inside Syria and lob them at the government in Damascus and try to get rid of it. Because that, these organizations are completely different, right? And Hamas exists since a long time. The reason that they have patched things up now, because you might be asking yourself, well, okay, why would they suddenly change their mind, or why would there suddenly be a détente, rapprochement in 2022? The answer lies in the situation on the ground, which is that the resistance axis is becoming stronger and stronger. Ask yourself this question. Hezbollah, today in 2022, are they weaker or stronger than 10 years ago? Than 20 years ago? Is Iran weaker or stronger today compared to 10, 20 years ago? All of these countries that they brainwash people into hating on the news, right? And they dub them the axis of evil. You remember David Frum, who was George Bush's speechwriter? He coined this term, axis of evil. And they just put everyone who won't accept American and Western banks, North Korea, Syria, whatever. Yeah, axis of evil. They're all bad. They're evil. We're the good guys. They're the bad guys, right? It's like a cowboy movie or something. That term was flipped on its head and turned into axis of resistance. And what I think is so interesting about it is that look at who is in this axis of resistance. Iran, Syria, Hamas, Hezbollah. These groups, these countries, these organizations, they have nothing to do with each other in terms of, having the same political system. People also say Nicaragua, Venezuela, you should count them in there too, right? Yemen, the Hashd al-Sha'bi. They're all different. Syria is a secular country. Iran is an Islamic republic. Hezbollah is Shia. Hamas is Sunni. And so when you see this, you see that actually all these groups are uniting together to fight thieves, colonizers, invaders, killers, be they British, be they French, be they American, be they Israeli. Then you start to understand what is actually happening. The completely ignorant, basic, simpleton logic that they teach people in the West is that, oh yeah, it's just like it's Sunni versus Shia, and it's a religious thing and blah blah blah. Complete utter rubbish. Why would Iran be supporting Hamas if it's about Shia versus Sunni? Explain that one to me. Why would Syria, a secular country, be hosting Palestinian Islamic Jihad? Because they all have a common cause. Do you understand? Why would Iran be working with Venezuela? Is Venezuela an Islamic republic? Is Venezuela Shia? This has nothing to do with religion and everything to do with decolonization. This is the real decolonization, not this stuff they tell you that, oh, it started in 1945 and everyone magically had independence. No. When you understand what the International Monetary Fund is, the IMF, the World Bank, and you know all this NGO complex, how they keep all these countries in debt in perpetuity, the multinational corporations, it's colonialism, you know, with a different name. When you have actual anti-colonial movements, right? Actual decolonization, what do they tell you? Oh, they're terrorists. That's the excuse. So for me, right, just observing this, what I gather from seeing Hamas and Syria mending ties is that both of these parties are seeing that Israel is getting weaker, the United States, and when I say the United States, I'm talking about the West in general, especially what's happening now because of Ukraine being a trigger and having global ramifications. Everybody is looking at this and they're like, you guys are screwed, right? And there's nothing funny about it, but I'm talking about the governments, I'm talking about the system itself. And that doesn't mean tomorrow morning you're going to wake up and, the petrodollar disappeared and all these 800 American military bases disappeared and the world is perfect. No. I don't know what the world is going to be like. Who the hell knows what it's going to be like in 50 years, in 20 years, in 5 years? No one is saying that the next system or the next, if it's a multipolar world, for example, is going to be necessarily better. We can't know that. I'm not, this is not a card reading show. I don't do tarot. But the current system, I can tell you with utmost certainty, has to go. It's corrupt, it's evil. It's been going on for centuries. It's murderous, right? And it's all about exploitation, slavery, resources. All about exploitation. And I think it's this what you're seeing right here. This is very, very important. And it doesn't mean that Syria can also just give them all the help that it used to. But again, I'll remind you that one of the reasons Syria is being attacked by Israel is precisely because of this support for the Palestinian cause, for the Lebanese resistance, for all the Arabs in the region that are fighting against imperialism. That is one of the reasons Syria is paying this price. It's not the only one, but it's one of the biggest reasons. No question. Right? And you don't need to take my word for it. You go listen to the Israelis, right? They'll tell you, Hamas and Hezbollah, they're moving weapons through Syria, and there's Iran and blah, 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 right? Like Syria is the one that is helping all of these resistance movements. So that's why they bombed Syria and they hurt Syria. I don't know how the Israelis are going to react to this, but they bombed Damascus International Airport. Just 2-3 days ago, they killed 5 Syrian soldiers. They get away with violating international law and all sorts of crimes, right? Because they're given a carte blanche by the West. But I would not be too cocky if I were an Israeli seeing this. I would not be too happy about that or too cocky, because all of these groups are getting bigger. All of these, Iran, even despite the sanctions and sanctions hurt. It's progressed so much militarily, so much with a nuclear program that that's impressive, and it shows you that sanctions never ever lead to regime change. They only lead to suffering, but they don't tell you that part. Never listen to anyone who's telling you that it's religion and blah blah blah. Complete rubbish. It's all about having a resistance front. And this is proof of that. You can see here, this is September 17th. Hamas condemns the Israeli strikes as it seeks to restore ties with Syria. So that's, again, Hamas publicly not just, burying the hatchet, as they say, or shall we say patching things up with Syria, but also coming out and officially taking Syria's side. You wouldn't have seen that before, I think, not too often anyway, right? And I love how the Jerusalem Post, they say, the missile strikes on Damascus International Airport, which were reportedly carried out by Israel. Reportedly. As if, it was the space invaders from, Mars who did it. It was the Air Force of Australia, it was the Royal Australian Air Force. Who else did it? Now that Jordan has normalized ties with Syria again, not completely, but they opened the border, flights. King Abdullah, he spoke with Assad, I think, about 6 months ago on the phone. Saudi Arabia is an entirely different beast, but even with Saudi Arabia, you heard reports that they're seeking to amend ties with Damascus. All of these Arab countries that were, basically treating Syria like a pariah, doing a 180 now, because they can see that this regime change project did not work, and they had better work with their neighbor, because it's to their own detriment if they don't. And they really kind of just look like fools, to be honest. But anyway, I'm not gonna sit here and make it a black and white story. I'm just showing you that the resistance axis is getting stronger. Pay attention to that. In World War II, people always praise the French resistance, right? La résistance. And they were so tough, and yeah, they were. Although I went to a French school, and I can tell the official French statistic is that 1% of the French population resisted the Nazis actively. That's besides the point. The French resistance, who do you think was in the French resistance? You think it was just like, random, farmers and painters and whatever, and, bakers who hate Nazis? A lot of them were communists. Actually, the toughest fighting factions in the French resistance, or some of the toughest, were communists, right? And number one, I don't think a lot of people are aware of that. And number two, it just goes to show you that, you don't have to be a communist to go and fight fucking Nazis alongside those groups. You get what I mean? I think it's an analogy that works pretty well, right? That you have a collective front working towards a common goal, even though you don't necessarily know or agree or see eye to eye with every member of the group or every party.